Thank you guys so much for coming out. I was actually here a year ago and it was just half the room. So I guess I've made something like an impact over the last 365 days. So it's a blessing always to be in front of crowds and to travel in the way that I do with a message that I just hold so close to my heart and one that I believe just to be the truth. So I want to actually start today by just discussing a current event because I really think it adds color to where we are at in society. For those of you that pay attention to online trends on social media, or what the Yahoo headlines are for the day, or what the Twitter trending stories are, right now Mario Lopez, for those of you that don't know him, he is a former actor who does a lot of work in Hollywood. He was on Saved by the Bell. He played someone named AC Slater, and he's had a pretty great rise in Hollywood, and is very close with a lot of the leftists in Hollywood. And Mario and I began speaking over social media, and I invited him to come on my show, the Candace Owens show at PragerU, because it's very rare that you get a celebrity in Hollywood that's willing to come out and speak to conservatives on the other side. And what I believe to be true is that conservatives have to win back culture. We have to speak to people that are in Hollywood and get them to understand our perspective if we're going to make an impact. So Mario is a conservative, and he was willing to come out of the closet, as I like to say, with his conservative principles. First I had John Voight, and then I had Mario Lopez, and he kept the conversation. It was very vanilla. He wanted to be very safe and not to say anything that might upset the radical leftists. And at one point in the conversation, we started talking about the LGBT movement, and the T part of this is something that I've been very interested in, because for those of you that don't know, on the elementary school level, they're beginning to allow children to pick their genders. So you can send your child to elementary school, and all day they can be calling your little boy her and she, and they're not required to tell the parent that they're doing this. It's seen as an element of protecting the child, and gender is, as you guys understand today, the mainstream narrative is that it's just a construct, and parents that don't accept this are bullied. So I try to provide a dialogue just so parents know what's going on in elementary schools and middle schools and high schools today, because it's even dramatically different from when I was in school, and I'm 30 years old. So Mario talked about this, and he was very polite. He said, you know, I trust children. I trust adults to raise their children in the way that they want to, and I always want to respect that. But for me personally, I think that it's dangerous when you start allowing 3-year-olds to make permanent decisions in their life. And he was referring to allowing children, obviously, to pick their gender and go through something as rigorous as gender reassignment surgery so young. That was his only statement. You know, I think it's dangerous to allow 3-year-olds to make permanent life choices. Interview aired 1 month ago, and there was silence. Today, woke up, and it's Cancer Mario Lopez, the Access Hollywood job that he has, is speaking out. GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance, is speaking out, and they've issued a statement saying that he should have to give a sizable donation, he should lose his job, and it's a really scary thing. Like Mario, he just had his 3rd child, I think 2 weeks ago, and he just signed a contract with Access Hollywood to do a show, and all of that is now on the line because he said one sentence on my show, and it's trending right now. So I just wanted to just give you that perspective of where we're at in society, where saying things that make sense and understanding that there are 2 genders, that you can be a boy or you can be a girl, saying that outwardly is now a means of losing your job and your source of income to provide for your family. And I've been feeling horrible all day about this because it's a tough conversation to have, because there's nothing he did wrong, there's nothing I did wrong, and yet it's going to lead to such detrimental consequences because we have the mob on the left, which is now dictating with this trans lobby that we all have to accept that children can choose their genders. A lot of this is why I do what I do, and I obviously get hit every single day. I like to say that once every 2 months I'm trending for something ridiculous, and they have me pegged as the nation's first black white supremacist. So we've really gone downhill very fast in society. But this is real. You could speak to someone on campus and they will explain to you how I am a white supremacist, because there is no reality anymore. It doesn't matter. So they will try to explain to you and use concrete detail to explain that there are some black people that wish to create a society that they will not be able to live in. That's the idea of what a black white supremacist is today. So I just speak about my values and where I came from, and for those of you that have followed my story from the beginning, you know that I was a liberal. I was on the left. I was one of those people that believed, because of the color of my skin, that I had to be a liberal. And if you had asked me coming out of high school, and I talk about the school system a lot and what it does, because it is rotten and it's brainwashing children, if you had asked me out of high school to tell you my political perspective, I would have said I was a Democrat, and I would have said that Republicans were racist. I knew very little. I didn't know much about history, but I knew those two things to be true. And that is a credit to our education system, which no longer challenges children to think critically. They challenge children to remember. And I tell this story the whole time about my upbringing, and I was always one of those kids that pushed back. People ask me now, how do you push back all the time? Where do you get this spirit? How do you, get the nerve to go up in Congress and say that to Ted Lieu and Jerry Nadler? And I just kind of came out of the womb that way. That really is the truth. I was a difficult child. I was always never accepting my parents. You parents love to say, because I said so, and your kids are supposed to do whatever, the magic 4 words, because I said so. I always pushed back, not against authority, but against unreasonable authority. I always demanded an explanation. I always wanted to think critically. To this day, I have to have an understanding of what I'm doing, and it can frustrate people. And today I'm friends with one of my high school teachers, Mr. White, and we ping on Facebook back and forth. And he's a liberal, a classical liberal, the ones that disagree with you but believe that you have a right to exist, right? You have a right to have a job and an income. One of those old school types of liberals. He was a great teacher, and I drove him absolutely crazy. And he always says that if there was one person that would end up doing what you are doing, Candace, I would have put my money on you because you were just a pain in my butt. And he tells the story of a test that I took on World War II. He reminded me of, and one of the questions on the test was why did America have to drop the bomb on Hiroshima? Pretty straightforward question. Everybody in the class obviously began scribbling the answer except for me. I rose my hand because I had a problem with the question. And Mr. White said, Candace, what could possibly be wrong? And I said, I don't like the way the question is phrased. I said, the answer is already implied. Why did America have to drop the bomb on Hiroshima? I would rather you asked us, did America have to drop the bomb on Hiroshima? A very important difference that I had already realized in high school. One is asking me to think critically, to analyze everything that's going on, and determine whether or not we had to take that action. And of course, maybe if I sat down to think about it, my answer would be yes. It put an end to a war and ultimately saved millions of lives. But not phrasing it in that way is the way the school system operates today. And you see a lot of that. And I took, I always say that Mr. White received a blessing, just like my parents did when it was time for me to go to school. Mr. White received a blessing as it was time for me to leave high school and go to college. This is how adults get lucky. They don't have to deal with me and my frustrating questions. And I was required to take, required being the key word here, a Feminism 101 course. I think this was really sort of the beginning of leftist dogma being taught in the classroom, requiring children to take things. I think my options were African American studies, gender studies, or Feminism 101. Interesting, right? So I went with what I thought was the less of the 3 evils, but now I think it is the number 1 evil. Radicalized feminism is a real issue we're facing today. And in this course, it was pretty ridiculous. You could get an A in this class very simply. We had this textbook, and it basically had every problem that women have faced since the beginning of the dawn of time. And the answer, she'd pluck out one of these problems, and then she would turn around to the class, and she would say, why are women facing this problem? And all we had to do was say, because of men. I mean, it's a very simple class. So she'd say, why did I lose my keys this morning? So smart. You're going places. A A plus, and this is literally how the class functioned. And for me, that was like, ooh, I sort of feel like maybe there's something else going on here. And this is sort of the early tide of blaming patriarchy when you see these radical feminists and they're putting on pussy hats is what they call them, and they're shouting. This is where they're getting that from, just so you know. We're learning this actively in the school system, and we're being taught this. And I remember one particular class, and it's such an important one that I go back to all the time, where she plucked out one of her problems in our math, in this textbook, and it was about eating disorders. And the statistic that she had at the time was that 89% of people in America that are facing eating disorders are women. Then she turned to the class and asked the important question, why is that? Because of men. You're so smart. It's just, obviously it's because of men. And I think I chuckled, like out loud. It was just so absurd to me. And she turned around to me. We were fast enemies already. As soon as I sat down in the chair, and she said, "What? What, Candace? What could you possibly think is funny about this statistic?" And I said, I mean, it can't all be because of men. And I said, and maybe there are some alternate statistics that we should be taking a look at, right? Like, what are the statistics of people in society that shoot up steroids to make themselves very muscly? Is that 89% of men, and is that because of women? And she was like, completely lost her color. I mean, she was just like, oh my goodness. And she turned around to me, and I'll never forget the words she said. She said, "Candace, I just feel like you were sent to me from the men's department." It's just, and I never forget this moment. She literally said that, and I turned around to her and I said, "No, I feel like I was sent to you from the common sense department." And so much of what I do today really does just feel like common sense, right? Like it seems heroic and revolutionary, it's just really common sense. I'm trying to bring back common sense. And we traded bars back and forth, and then I shut down everything that she was saying. And for those of you that follow me and know, I do a lot of speaking in front of young women, because when I was from the ages of 18 to 22, I actually had an eating disorder. So I was sitting in her classroom. I had anorexia for 4 years. I was sitting in her classroom, and she was teaching me that my anorexia was because of men, and it wasn't. It just simply wasn't. I used anorexia as a control mechanism when things went out of control for me when I was in high school. And yet here I was standing in front of her, and she was saying, no, ignore all of that. She wasn't asking questions. She wasn't looking to turn around to women and ask about our experiences and why that is. She was looking to brainwash me, to tell me to be angry and bitter about men who she was saying control the marketing industry and were putting models that were too skinny on the billboards. And it shut down that conversation really quick, saying, oh, actually, I have an eating disorder. Whoa, now what is she going to do? That is probably, and I didn't realize it at the time, I realize this now in the retrospect, but that moment in my classroom really was the most basic understanding of the differences between liberals and conservatives, between leftists and conservatives, right? You see, conservatives, or rather liberals, when they have a problem, they look outwardly. They look externally. They say, I have a problem, who can I blame, right? If I'm a woman, it's because of men. If I'm poor, it's because of wealthy people. If I'm short, it's because of tall people. If I'm fat, it's because of skinny people. This is the way the leftist mind operates. And conservatives, we do something that's totally crazy. We say, maybe it's me. I have a problem. Maybe I have the power to fix it. Maybe internally I can fix this. What can I do to change my circumstances? And that is seen as so crazy today. I dropped out of school. I was one of those kids that signed up really quickly for school, had no idea what I wanted to do, took out $100,000 in student loans because you have the high school teachers that if you don't go to college, you will be a failure. And I came from a family with absolutely no money. So I had to take out $100,000 in loans, and in my senior year, Sallie Mae had the collapse, and they denied my loan, so I had to get sent out into the world, $100,000 plus in debt with no degree. I wish I could have just said that was because of men. I mean, really. But I didn't. I got a job. I moved to New York and I started working. And let me tell you, if Bernie Sanders is going to just absolve everyone's student loans after I paid $150K, he's going to have problems with me personally. But I hit the ground running, and I worked, and I worked, and I didn't care anything about politics. I never did. And I would say most Black Americans, and for those of you that suffered through the debates last night, I didn't. I actually don't watch Mexico's presidential debates, which is why it seems like they're competing for, right? For those of you that suffered through it, you're seeing that at the nucleus, it's all about Black America, right? It's all about reparations, what we're going to do for Black America. And it's a ploy that they've been using for a very long time. And one thing to know about most Black Americans is that we're so burdened by issues that were actually created by liberal policies, and we don't come up for air fast enough to be able to understand that it's all related to liberal policies. And I really was that stereotype. Didn't care about the political debate, didn't care about the discussion, already knew Republicans were racist, didn't care to even vote. I just wanted to pay the student loans, had to deal with Sally Mae calling me every day, threatening to take my first child. And that was sort of where my mindset was. And then this crazy thing happened in 2015, and a man by the name of Donald J. Trump came down the escalator. Exactly. And didn't matter where you were on the political spectrum, didn't matter if you never paid a day of attention to politics, you paid attention on that day, right? Everyone suddenly became interested in politics when he came down the escalator. And this was my wake-up moment. And I instantly thought, I woke up and I said, nope. Donald J. Trump should not be the president of the United States. That was my initial reaction. I said, no way. This is the guy that says you're fired. He'll make a mockery of politics. He'll be so bad for America. It will look so bad because he's too gimmicky. He's a joke. That was my initial response. But more important than the things that I was thinking were the things that I wasn't thinking. At no point in my mind did I say, he's a racist. And instantly, right after he came down and made that announcement, you turned on the TV, and it was like he had never been in the public space before, and they had suddenly discovered that he was a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, anti-Semitic, right? They said he was transphobic. They said at one point, and this is quite disgusting, that he was incestuous, that he had feelings for Ivanka. Do you remember that crazy story that they were circulating? Overnight, it was stunning. And that became my real aha moment, and I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. Maybe I thought he was ill-prepared for the job, but I never thought any of these things. How can they destroy this man's reputation? He was loved. He was celebrated. For people that grew up listening to hip-hop music like me, all of the hip-hop artists wanted to be like Trump. It was Barack Obama, right, that said the American dream was to be like Donald Trump. This was an agreement across the board. And suddenly they wanted us to pretend they never celebrated him, that he was horrible. And the same people that loved him now hated him. And I asked myself a very important question that day. I said, is it possible that racism is now being used as a theme to turn Black people into single-issue voters? And of course the answer was yes. So I said, what am I going to do about it? I feel like Black America just needs to hear a different perspective, really. And I didn't know too much, but I knew that the inkling was wrong. Something really wrong was happening there. And I had this genius idea to launch a YouTube channel because I'm a millennial and that's what makes sense. And to just present a different perspective. I didn't throw on a MAGA hat. I didn't say I was pro-Trump, but I just started talking about conservative principles. And when I started looking at policies, I was stunned to find out that I wasn't conservative. I wasn't blaming anybody for the things that I had done. I didn't feel that it was somebody else's fault that I didn't understand my student loans. I didn't want anybody else to pay them back. I was raised by my grandfather, who is actually staunchly conservative. He's one of those old school people that believes in God and believes in the family. You know, imagine that. And we had so many rules in my household, and nothing, actually nothing on the left was anything that I believed in. And what a surprise that was. And instantly, I put out one video. It was a satirical stab at how it's more complicated today to come out as conservative than it is to come out as LGBT. And instantly I got hit, and there were articles written about me, and I was attacked. My family was attacked, and they did the typical Uncle Tom, a coon, a house Negro, a bedwench, horrible, horrible racist stuff coming from the people that love Black people. All they want, right? It's amazing. They love Black people. All they want to do is give Black people a platform. They want to make our voices louder. Oh, this is the party that loves women. Oh, wait, are you conservative? Cancel, right? Are you a conservative Black American? Cancel that. And I didn't feel deterred by it. I was inspired. The idea, I was still the same Candace Owens. I don't like for people to tell me what to think. It just drove me more. It drove me more into the fire. And I knew that I had to start researching. And I needed to not just have the feeling, but I needed to have the facts on my side. And I was stunned. I was stunned at the things that I found. Today, one of the things that, and I'm actually, my book announcement is coming in 2 days, and I'll give you guys a preview here. My book is called Blackout, and the subtitle is Black America's Second Escape from a Democrat Plantation. And I mean that, and the wall, yeah, you gotta hit home. And I based that subtitle on a hit piece that was written about me in the Washington Post, actually. My good friends, the Washington Post, they write about once a month a nice hit piece. And this particular hit piece said that Republicans are starting to use the term Democrat plantation, and it's wrong, and it had a big picture of me saying that I was the one responsible for popularizing the expression Democrat plantation. And in this piece, the author basically says how wrong it is, and that Black Americans do vote for Democrats all the time, but it's out of our own agency to do so. It's because we've looked at the candidates and we've determined that Democrats are just the best. And what the author was missing, because they don't contact you when they write these pieces, they just write them, they're activists. What the author was missing was that I wasn't saying it to be funny or to be controversial or to be cute or to popularize an expression. I said it because I meant it. Because after researching and looking at what the Democrats have done to Black America, this is an ideological form of the very same plantations that the Democrats had back when we first came into this country. And I say the Democrats because at the start of the Civil War, not a single Republican owned a slave in this country. Components in terms of slave life. Slaves were not allowed to learn to read. It was very important that slaves were illiterate. In fact, it was so important that it was law that if you were teaching a slave how to read, you would be punished by the law if you were a white American. And slaves were, they would have their limbs severed if they were caught reading. Illiteracy was so important. If you saw my testimony in front of Congress, everyone is debating what's wrong with Black America, no one is talking about the fact that our literacy rates are off the charts right now. 75% of Black boys in California can't pass a basic reading exam. In the city of Baltimore, which the president has finally shed some light on, across 10 schools, not a single Black child can pass a literacy exam. That is stunning. All right, if anybody cared about Black America, that would be the number one thing that they're talking about. Why aren't Black Americans learning to read throughout the public school system? The second element, which is so important for people to understand, is the breakdown of family. And really, this is so much is wrapped into the breakdown of family. Pay attention to everything that is happening today. Their goal is to break down the family. I was reading Frederick Douglass's book. It was a narrative on his life as a slave, and he opens up in talking about how he felt nothing when his mother died. He felt nothing when they moved him from the plantation where his sisters were on. He felt nothing for his family because they wanted to make sure there was no bonding amongst slaves and their families because they were constantly switching and selling them. So a piece of that was to dehumanize them by making family the least important thing on a plantation. Well, look what's happening in Black America today. In the 1960s, the single motherhood rate in Black America was 23%. And at that time, that was considered monstrously high. It was a shock. There were articles written going, we have a problem here because 23% of Black Americans are growing up without a father in the home. Today, the single motherhood rate is 74%. 74% in Black America today, and nobody's talking about that. It was Barack Obama that told us what happens when people grow up without a father in the home. You are 12 times more likely to end up behind bars, 9 times more likely to lead a life of crime, 6 times more likely to drop out of high school. Barack Obama gave you that. He said that it was the most important thing for people to be discussing was father absence, and yet no one talks about it today because they want that. And we see this promoted through various movements. Everything that radicalized feminism is, everything that the LGBT lobby, trying to turn men into women, right? Being a man is wrong, Gillette commercial. If you have any impulse of masculinity, terminate it, it's wrong, right? And then they're trying to turn women into men. If you have any impulse of maternity, if you want to raise your children, right? There's something wrong with that. Why don't you want more out of businesses? You shouldn't want to, you should deny your maternal instincts because there's something intrinsically wrong with that. That is the mainstream narrative today. And it's what I speak out against when I say proudly that I'm not a feminist. I don't support radicalized feminism in the form that it has taken today. What it began as is not what it is today. And it's important that people see that. Another component of that is the popularization of mocking people that believe in God, mocking religion. That's mainstream now. When you see Joy Behar on The View and she's laughing and mocking our Vice President, Mike Pence, because he's faithful to his wife, right? Because he believes in Jesus Christ, because he puts his life in the church above everything else. What is happening there is they're trying to popularize and make it seem weird for people that have any religious ties. And that too is a component, because if you want to grow government, right, you have to make sure that people believe in nothing else. Atheism is so important to the left, because if you aspire to grow government, people must believe in nothing else. And that is a tribute to the Marxist doctrine and what we're seeing happen on the left, as you see Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and these people are outwardly racist, outwardly anti-Semitic, bitter towards Israel, bitter towards towards white American men, right? Unless there's something abnormal about you. You can't be a straight white male in society today. That is like pitchfork mentality, and people come after you. So I speak a lot about this, and I've written a lot about this, because people need to realize what's happening in society and what we're actually up against, because what they're aspiring towards is just chaos. I was fortunate in one of my podcast episodes to sit across from Dennis Prager, who is just a phenomenal human being, one of the greatest orators of our time. And I asked him a question, a very naive question. I said, "Why are they doing this? What is wrong with them? Why do they want up to be down and down to be up, and for everybody to be sideways and constantly angry?" He said, "Aha, that's what you're missing. There is no reason. When you start asking why, you'll get into trouble, because what they're after is complete and utter chaos. They want chaos. And so it's important that we realize that, and we try to stabilize that, and that we have more people that are using their platforms to get out in front of this and speak about what the left is actually doing when they're pretending that Venezuela is a dream, that Fidel Castro and Stalin were the ones that had the ideas right, that we need open borders. I mean, how insanely racist is that? First and foremost, abolishing ICE, abolishing Border Patrol agents. Over 50% of Border Patrol agents are Hispanic. So you're talking about abolishing the jobs for legal Hispanic American men in favor of importing illegals that are sanctioned by the cartels. I actually went down to El Paso, Texas at the wall to learn more about this, because in order to understand and to get around the narrative, you have to go directly to the source and speak to those people. It was under Barack Obama in 2008 that the United States Commission of Civil Rights did a report and looked into our illegal immigration problem, and they determined that the number one group of people that are impacted by open borders or impacted by illegal immigration are Black American men between the ages of 18 and 22. And that's because they are the low-skilled workers, the low-wage workers. When you start importing illegals and they start doing work, they have to compete with them. If someone comes in and says, "I'll do it for under minimum wage," that's a direct competition for Black American men. This is what I tried to get out in front of people and discuss. I consider Trump and his presidency and the awakening that it brought into my life to be one of the greatest blessings that I've ever experienced. And it's largely due to the fact that he taught me how to love the American flag, for me to understand how important it is and how grateful I should feel every single day to live in what I believe to be the greatest country on the face of the planet. A country that has brought us opportunities, a country that has its past and has its ugly spots, right? We know that every country, everyone in the world has its ugly spots, but there's no greater country in the world when it comes to opportunity. And so often you hear people on the left say, "Oh, that's crazy. How can you say America is the greatest country," right? When you have people that are getting higher math scores in India and in China and this and that. Well, why are they trying to come here? Why is it that when they pass all those exams, they want to come to America? What is it that America is offering that so many people want to come here? And what it is, it's the American dream. It's my grandfather who started his life on a sharecropping farm in Fayetteville, North Carolina, who grew up in the segregated South, who had his first job when he was 5 years old, and that job was picking cotton and laying out tobacco to dry at 5 a.m. in the morning, he'd say, before the sun came up, because otherwise it would be too hot. That was his first job. It's my grandfather who grew up with the real KKK, not the fake Charlottesville debacle that they try to create and pretend that suddenly the KKK is alive and well. But the real KKK who used to shoot bullets into his home at night because they had a problem with his father, my great-grandfather. And when my grandfather, and this is the interesting part, when my grandfather would tell me these stories around the dinner table, he never said it from a position of being a victim. Never, not once. He said it from a position of pride, of victorhood. He'd say to me, the KKK would come and shoot bullets, and my daddy would grab the shotgun and shoot back at them boys. You know, boys is what he referred to, the big scary Ku Klux Klan that nobody has experienced, right? And my grandfather moved up north and married my grandmother when he was 17 years old, stayed married to her until her dying day in 2013. And we all of us grandchildren were able to live in their households at various points in their lives. And today, when my grandfather retired, he moved back down to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and he purchased the farm. He purchased the farm that he grew up in. He owns it. My grandfather is a hero, and he's an example of the American dream. That is the dream, that if you come into this country, nobody cares about your color, your gender, your sex, your sexuality. Nobody cares. If you're willing to work hard, right, and not complain, understand our values as Americans, this country will reward you. That's really what we're up against in 2020, protecting the values of what it means to be America, protecting that dream. Never once in my household growing up did my grandfather ever utter a bad word about a white person. Did he ever say, poor me, woe is me? He never had that mentality. Victimhood has been a plague across the board for all minorities and especially Black Americans who are being taught that there is virtue in victimhood. There is nothing in victimhood. There's permanent upset. You can wake up every day and feel bad about yourself. You can find confirmation bias online to think that we're living in a horrible position when in fact we are the most privileged people that have ever lived in the history of the world. That is the truth. If you live in America today. Making my grandfather's mentality relevant again, that is why I started the BLEXIT movement, the Black exit from the leftist ideology, from the leftist doctrine of victimhood in exchange for something that feels better. I think that what we have is just a better product. I don't know, if I went door to door and sold someone misery and I said, hey, every day you could wake up and be really upset about something, right? Find an article that'll make you really bitter, or we can knock door to door and say, hey, everybody has a bad story. If I went around this room and I said, tell me the worst part of your life, every single person in this room would be a victim of some sort. I know people that have grown up in poverty like I have, and people that have grown up wealthier and had worse circumstances. Losing a parent when they're young, whatever it is. Everybody is a victim, but not everybody is a victor. That's a choice. Deciding to keep getting up no matter how many times you fall on the ground is a choice. And that's the choice that I try to go to door and give to minorities, to say, I know about being a victim, but what about being a victor? What about entering in the American dream again? How about that? What about championing your experiences? That is what I hope that every single one of you will help us fight to protect in 2020. And it's a cultural fight. It really is. We gave up culture to the left. They're the ones that have SNL. They're the ones that make fun of conservatives, and we stay so safe. We don't think we can be funny or we can venture out and do the same things that they're doing, but we can. And that's what I try to do with PragerU. That has been the blessing, fighting the cultural war every single day. And I have to say, when we get to the point where they're starting to call Black people white supremacists, we might be winning. We might be on the brink of winning. So. I want to thank you guys so much for having me and open up the floor to any questions. I think we should do some questions. Is that all right? Do we have time for questions? Yeah. Awesome.
First off, thanks, Candace, for coming back the second time. We well appreciate it. And in the description, you talked about winning the cultural war. We understand that war starts with a victory, quite frankly, at the ballot box. What is it that we can do as political actuaries in order to be able to affect an increase in the Black vote specifically?
Right.
We've been talking about it for a long time. Well, what specifically do you see that needs to be done?
So that victory actually starts ahead of the ballot box. Is what I do every single day, which is just helping people to realize that. By the way, you show me a black person in America, I'll show you someone that's conservative and doesn't know it. We're all conservative, God-fearing. In terms of the people that are the most conservative, it's black Americans. We just need somebody to switch the light on. In terms of how you can help, I mean, I think I can tell you when I started on YouTube and I started making videos, I didn't know where it was going to go. And somebody contacted me on Facebook. It was a guy out in California named Gabe. And he said, listen, you're going places. You have a really strong message and I want to support you. He started supporting my Patreon, which is like an online, you can raise money to create art or whatever it is. And he sent $500 a month. That made all the difference. It's unbelievable. And now, you know, I don't need his $500 a month. And we think about just seeing talent, going online. There are so many young YouTubers that are trying to get their voices out. And sponsoring them. When we did the Black Leadership Summit, I brought 500 black conservatives or black conservative curious people, right? Conservative curious is what they like to call themselves at first, to the White House to meet the president. And each one of their flights was sponsored by a Republican, right? So these are kids that thought Republicans were racist. Republicans sponsored their flights. I would say 70% of them had never been on a plane before. We had to get on the phone with their moms who were saying, like, is this a scam, right? Like, why would anyone want to take my kid out of the projects and invite them to hear Dr. Ben Carson meet the President of the United States? And we said, no, this isn't a scam. And some of them had never been on a train before. We had one girl who went to Goodwill and looked for a dress because she didn't know what to wear to meet the president. We had another young lady who borrowed her grandmother's dress because she didn't know what to wear to meet the president. And this is what's so important. When you have a community that has been so economically distressed by liberal policies, the left is able to keep them there because they never hear a different perspective. It becomes Plato's allegory of the cave. The shadows on the wall become reality because you've never stepped outside and you've never seen anything else. That experience, whatever it is that you can do to provide people, helps. Also, just sharing the videos. I mean, my videos went viral because people were just sharing the videos. You see something, don't be scared to hit retweet. Don't be afraid to put it on Facebook. It's not coming from you if you're just sharing a video, right? You can just say, what do you think? Question mark, and share a video of one of us ranting. There's so many ways to get involved, and obviously many of you guys already support, Prager University. They're on the front lines, I believe, of the cultural fight. Turning Point USA, which is, I used to work with them. I'm with PragerU now. There's so many amazing organizations that are trying to lift up these voices and get them on the front lines. But it is going to have to come from the minority community. I do believe that.
And locally, we have the Rocky Mountain Black Conservatives who take 20 black college students to Washington every summer.
I love that.
Phenomenal program.
Right. It makes a difference. And once they see it, they can't unsee it. That's all I can say. I always say this. I've seen so many black liberals go conservative. I've never seen a black conservative go liberal. There's something to it. Sir?
Candace, big fan.
Thank you.
I was reviewing your CPAC speech recently, and you mentioned how the left has control over the culture, and that how we have to grab it back. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how that would happen. It seems almost impossible.
Right, it's not, and I mean, this is why, we need to have conservative shows. I was speaking to some of the high school kids that are here today. I said, don't be afraid to try on humor. When I first got started, I will share this, the National Review was among the first ones to write a hit piece about me. And what they said is that conservatives, this was the never Trumpers, it was, pre-Trump, but conservatives need to reject this sort of conservatism because I was being funny. I was, making satirical, comical skits, and they were saying, this is not what we do, it's not us. And I look at that in retrospect, how harmful. How harmful to say there's not a place for humor. There's no better way to convey your message than to be funny. And the young kids in here, the meme cultures, they understand this. I will tell you, he's laughing because he's like, yeah, they take a picture, they put one caption on it, and it gets 250,000 shares, because it's funny and it drives a point home very quickly. That stuff works. I saw when AOC dressed up in all white and put on red lipstick and went to go look at a parking lot, I guess, at the border, and I saw it circulating. So me and my assistant, I don't know where she is, but I said, I'm gonna go put on all white and red lipstick and let's go recreate that, right? And I sent a message. I said, but I'm outside of black school where they can't find a single child that's literate. It drove them a message, it got millions of views, and it went viral. That's how you can deliver a message and win a culture war, just being funny. And I think that I do believe that conservatism, or republicanism rather, has been too austere in the past, and people don't feel like they can relate to it. It may make you uncomfortable, but don't reject things that are new. And one of the things that always makes me cringe is when people say, Trump's good, but I just wish he would stop tweeting. I'm like, oh, but that's how he won. That is literally how he is winning. Imagine if he relied on the mainstream media to get out his message. I mean, that would be ridiculous. So he's fighting a battle because he really understands social media and how it works, and he's perpetually trolling them, and trolling is a component of the culture war.
Thank you, Candace, for being here. Just the other day, I heard a poll, not that I believe polls these days, but it said 82% of African Americans would never vote for Trump. I'd like you to comment on that and how you're relating. This audience is pretty white. How often do you speak to black audiences?
Well, the BLEXIT movement is just that. It's just minorities. So that's my BLEXIT movement when I go city to city and take on inner cities. That's directly taking the message to Black America. And you have to do that. And by the way, I say Black America, but as soon as I launched BLEXIT, I received about 1,000 emails from the Latinos being like, you're not leaving us out, we're the L. So now BLEXIT is Black and Latinos. I should clarify that. They were not playing around. And then I got a bunch of emails from Asians, and they were like, there needs to be an Asian exit. Can you change it to BLEXIT? So I was like, okay, guys, we're getting a little crazy. But the Democrats know that poll is fake. They know that because look at all of their debates today. They're literally, now the debate is black people take our money. Like that's what they're saying now, right? Like just take our money, we'll do anything. They know something's cracking and something's happening in the black community. And in the ways that they have tried to assassinate my character, they hate me. I mean, I'm a trending story. They accused me and Donald Trump of the mosque shooting in New Zealand. I don't even talk about Islam. I mean, it's unbelievable. So there's a desperation, and they're very afraid right now. And let me tell you something about why I'm so optimistic about Black America. First and foremost, I think somebody counted on CNN last week. They said the word racist 2,200 times in 1 week. That is remarkable. That is a talent. We should applaud them. But despite the fact that they have increased this rhetoric, support for Donald Trump amongst minorities has doubled, and that is verified by even an NAACP poll, right? And they were like, it's only 14%, whatever it is. They're all acknowledging that it's doubled and gone up since he's gone into office. That means Black Americans are no longer listening to the racism claims anymore, even though you may feel like it because you're hearing it from the mainstream media. It really is becoming like the boy who cried wolf. When you call everything racist, it's really hard to make people feel anything about racism anymore. And they've, in my opinion, overplayed their hand dramatically. And then the last thing that I'll add here is why I'm so optimistic is because for those of you that don't know, the Democrats rely upon the black vote 100%. So Hillary Clinton got 89% of the black vote. We only have to move it 5 points in 2020 and their party's done. They cannot, if they get 84% of the black vote, they lose. They cannot dip below 85% and sustain their party. So the desperation that you're seeing is because for the first time there's actually a monolith being broken and a dialogue happening amongst Black Americans, and that terrifies them to their core.
Hi. What message would you give to young people who are coming into looking at universities and colleges who have been brought up by mainstream media and are trying to figure out their own message toward themselves because all they have seen their whole lives is media and Hollywood, and what message, what advice would you give them to expand their horizons?
So I will say this, I am the most optimistic about Generation Z. These younger kids, the millennials are the problem, right? The generation below the millennials, they're actually the solution. They're really irreverent. They're the meme culture. They're not as sensitive as the millennials were. I mean, they're trying out conservatism because they're being told they can't, and that's part of being young, right? Like, what are we not allowed to do? We're going to go try and do that, right? Because it feels very rock and roll. So I'm actually optimistic about the younger generation. I just think that parents have to do a good job of preparing them for what college is. And it really is just a virtue signaling totalitarian island. And that's the truth. I mean, today when the Mario Lopez thing went viral, I was talking to my fiance, and there was a professor. She had a PhD. She went to every university. She's got 12 years of university under her belt, and she was explaining to me that women can be men and men can be women. And I said to him, you have to go to school to be that dumb, right? Like you have to go to school to be that stupid. And that's kind of where we're at now, where it's like the more school you do, the further you are from reality, because you have no real life experience. Your life experience is in a classroom. You don't know what a dollar means. You don't know what hard work means. So I would say making sure that the kids know that the professors, the Marxist professors, are not real life, and also give them the courage and the power to know that they have your support. It's really hard being a conservative in high school or in college today, and standing behind them and saying, no matter what happens, like I always say, I will be in a school administration's worst nightmare. I will live in the principal's office when I have children someday, and fighting with them every step of the way, and making sure that they're taking practical majors, right? Not feminist dance class, right? I think that's always a good start if you tether them to reality via science and maths and engineering and the things that we actually need. You'll produce children that are more tethered to reality.
Hi there, Britta Horn. Thanks for coming and joining us here in the mountains. I'm from McCoy, and my question is not more of a question. I just want to hear more about your book that's coming out.
Yeah.
And if you could tell us a little bit more about the process and how long it took to write.
Yes, so I'm still writing it. It's on pre-sale. It's almost done. But I always knew I wanted to write a book. I wanted to make sure the timing was right, and I never wanted to be one of those people that paid someone $100,000 to write their book because their brand is hot, and that's really across the board what happens a lot. And for me, it had to be me. So actually, one of the things that me and the publisher were going back and forth on is they're like, a softer title, be nicer. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really do that, right? That's not really my brand. I'm more of a flamethrower because we need flames thrown right now. Flame throwing lights the path towards truth, in my opinion. So for me, I wanted it to be sort of my thesis for people to say, who is Candace Owens? Where did she come from? Because one of the things that the left tries to do is they try to make me white. I don't know, like I'm a rich white girl from Connecticut. It's really, I read articles on myself. I'm like, I sound like I grew up really wealthy, and I didn't come from a really broken childhood. And my father is an alcoholic. Grew up in a very abusive home. I wanted to tell them those stories. I experienced a hate crime when I was in high school, and actually being the victim of that hate crime actually shaped a lot of my views towards this path that people try to make people think that you should aspire to be a victim, and that's going to somehow make you feel good. It doesn't. It's about championing your victim experiences. So I wanted to give people a piece of me so they know where I came from, where these ideas came from, and why I view the left as so dangerous, and trying to first and foremost strip people of their self-confidence. I think that's the number one thing that they do. They're killers of self-confidence. They make you believe you can't the whole time, especially as a Black American. You're just sort of like, hey, you're Black, so it's going to be a tough ride for you because of white supremacy and white people have it better. I mean, you're really telling a kid they can't before they even try. So I wanted it to be very serious in its tone, and obviously with my personality, there's definitely are a couple of Candace gems in there. And to tell people what socialism is. You talk to kids today, they know exactly who Adolf Hitler is, right? But they have no idea about Joseph Stalin and Mao, who killed way more people. Why is that? Why aren't we learning about the dangers of socialism? Why do we have these kids walking around with Fidel Castro t-shirts, showing them the harms of that, and using Black America as the experiment of what socialism brings? Because they really did socialize Black America first via the welfare system, and we see what that produces. So it's a lot in there, but I think it will. I want it in the hands. I say to everyone, buy the book and then donate the book to a Black American. Give it away.
Okay.
Any who has the mic?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I do, yeah. Could you tell us about any challenges you've had and your strategies on how to deal with any censorship from YouTube or Twitter?
I'm either the right or wrong person to ask this. So I actually hold, I think, the trophy. I have been banned from YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and lived to tell about it. They all reinstated my accounts. I'm the only conservative that can say that. And they didn't just reinstate my accounts, they reinstated my accounts within 20 minutes of suspending the accounts. So I think how it goes is they go, oh, conservative idea, suspend, ban, and then they looked at me and they were like, oh, wait, she's black. We can't say we were, we can't say we were banning white supremacy. And then they bring my account back. So the magic of how quickly I get brought back is really a tribute to the fact that they can't censor me. I'm in that weird spot, right, where all they're claiming to fight is white nationalism and white supremacy, and I don't really fit the standard. They're trying to make it fit. But I don't look like a white supremacist yet, according to them. So, but the war and the censorship on social media is an important one. It's something that I think the president, and he's spoken about it, but it's going to have to pick up. We're okay in the short run. I know a lot of conservatives are really worried about it. They're like, well, they started on the fringes, they banned Alex Jones, and people like that, and now they're sort of working their way in. That's true, but also remember that when you ban someone like Alex Jones, who has a massive following, for those that don't know, whether you think he's completely insane or you think that he says things that are true, he has a massive following and a worldwide following. The people that follow him don't suddenly go, oh, well, I guess I'm a liberal, right? No, they actually dig their heels in further, and they're more conservative. Like they are the most conservative people are the ones that are watching the people that they follow get banned. So we're fine in the short run in terms of the 2020 election, in terms of people that they've banned. I think it's actually created more of a conversation, and it's making conservatives that were maybe a little more in the middle, pushing them a little further to the right and understanding that we're fighting something that's very real and dangerous.
I'm Stan Tenner. I just wanted to make a comment that I've been watching the debates, Democratic debates.
I'm sorry.
A few times.
I'm very
It's
sorry.
the scariest comedy on TV. And I wanted to point out that there was no American flag on the stage. In either one of those debates, I kind of wondered what country they're running for.
Mexico.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that makes sense. Anti-Americanism is being taught in the school system. It's completely rotten. There's like I had Steve Bannon on my show. That's the one that's airing on Sunday, and at the El Paso border we talked about this, and he and I disagreed. So he was right in his assessment about the fact that millennials grew up and they didn't understand. We weren't exposed to true capitalism. We were exposed to crony capitalism, which could in turn make people bitter about capitalism because we don't know how the free markets are supposed to work, right? And he was basically saying that until we bring back real capitalism, the real free markets, and millennials get a taste of what that is, they're going to tread towards socialism. And what I said to him is, oh, you're wrong. Even if you brought back all the jobs and you brought back free markets and they all had advantages and opportunities, they wouldn't take them because they're learning actively in school that there's something inherently wrong with success. They're learning that Americans are evil colonizers, right? And that there's virtue in standing up and saying that I hate being American. That is being taught actively in the school system. So millennials don't want success, right? They want to see everything given away. They wake up and they think there's something inherently wrong with being an American. And I don't know, I mean, I do everything I can to descend on these college campuses and to speak about this and to instill the values of what it means to be an American, the true values. But it is an uphill climb in terms of what we have to do to win the school systems back, I'll tell you that much. I was in an auditorium at UCLA. The students broke out into a USA chant, and then the other people stood up and said, that is racist. USA is racist. And I said, whoa, well, it's going to be an interesting, the Olympics is going to be really interesting. If you're wearing USA is racist now, if you're wearing an American flag, you're racist. Unfortunately, right? But this is what they're learning, that being pro-America is racist. So it's pretty scary.
I wonder if you could comment on the movement for reparations and what the consequences might be.
Oh my gosh, man, I'm either the right or the wrong person to ask. So it's comical on one end, it's really funny. It's a massive insult, I think, to Black America. And it just shows you how ridiculous they are. And they're constantly running in circles and they're so hypocritical. So let's just talk about what the Democrats have said over the last few years. This year, let's just take this year, we don't have to go back far. Voter ID laws would be racist. Black Americans essentially are too stupid to figure out how to get ID, right? Like you can't do anything in this country without ID, right? You can't drive, you can't buy a pack of cigarettes, you can't walk into, you can't go to a bar, you can't have a drink, but somehow Black Americans are too dumb to figure out how to get ID, and if that was the requirement, we wouldn't be able to vote. That has been the basis and the thesis of their argument against voter ID laws. But reparations, somehow, every Black American is going to be able to produce their ancestral paperwork to show that they're related to Harriet Tubman. I mean, really, it's just, I'm like, come on, really? Are we doing this right now? So, no. And what I say to Black America is, even if they figured out how they're going to figure out which white Americans fought against the South, right? Go figure that. What are we doing here? Blood test? Oh, you're from the North, you're okay. This guy's going to pay, he's from the South. Or what if you have, parents, one was up in the South? I mean, it's completely crazy. It's never going to happen. This is just a talking point. And they're going to put together committees to make themselves look serious so they can get the Black vote, because the Black vote is the most important. It's the easiest way that their party can slip and lose power completely. And so what I say to Black Americans is just, what an insult. And I said, even if they figured the entire thing out, what do you think you're getting? A $300 check? Like something, like it's going to mean absolutely nothing. And so I try to get out in front of that, and I say that it is really a great insult, and they think Black Americans are stupid. They've proven that time and time again. And what I say to Black America is we have to, in 2020, stop proving them right. We have to demand actual conversation, actual solutions. We have to start talking about Baltimore. We have to start talking about Chicago. We have to start talking about the illiteracy rates. We have to start talking about why progressive policies always lead to regressive results for Black America. We have to start talking about abortion and why more Black children are aborted than born alive in cities like New York. We have to talk about why the governor is lighting up the city pink to celebrate being able to do that at 9 months in the womb. Real conversations, not reparations, is what I'm demanding. That rhymes. Can we get that on a t-shirt? Where's my assistant? It's good, yeah. We'll do that.
Can you talk about the difficulty finding certain politicians and celebrities to debate you? Who would you love to debate if you could? And can you expand on the situation with Cardi B?
Cardi B. All right. Who does not know who Cardi B is? Oh, come on, be honest. Come on, you don't all know who Cardi. All right, there we go. No shame, it's fine. It's fine. All right, so we know that every election cycle, the left looks for their hip-hop artist or R&B star that's going to just put on a shirt and say, vote for this person, and millions of people are going to do it. In 2016, it was Beyonce and Jay-Z. Remember, like when she could have been talking to Americans, but Hillary was throwing a Beyonce and Jay-Z concert because I'm sure she listens to Jay-Z every morning. So I had been talking about that, how they do this every 4 years, and a star that sort of rose is a woman named Cardi B, right? So she started as a stripper, and then she was put on a VH1 show, a reality show called Love and Hip Hop. And then and I will say, I watched the show, she was a diamond in the rough in terms of she's got that it factor because she's unapologetically herself, like she has no shame, and that people gravitate towards that, where you're just like, it's like the Jersey Shore Snooki phenomenon, right? Really bad TV that you can't look away from. Now she's an actual hip hop artist, and she's the biggest hip hop artist in America right now. She's a rapper, and she has a massive following. I think she's got something like 50 million followers on Instagram, and she just does these rant videos, and she's been ranting about how Trump's a racist, and I had been watching that for a while, and I said, they're gonna go for Cardi B. Like, it makes sense. She ranted last year about how she actually is a conservative. She started her life from nothing, is something now, and when she started making money, she ranted about how ridiculous her taxes were. She was like, where's all this money going? She's like, this isn't tax, this is charity. And I pinged her, and I'm like, please, Cardi, you're a conservative, trust me, like, let's just sit down for a second. And then I pinged her last year on that. A week later, she was taking pictures with Malia and Sasha Obama. A week later, it was phenomenal. Last week, she posts a picture of her sitting down with Bernie Sanders. And she starts asking everybody who they're voting for. And suddenly, and because she doesn't understand policy, she has no idea, she knows she's getting taxes getting taken out and it's wrong. But now she's sitting next to Bernie Sanders. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? I'm just like, he will take 75% of your wealth. Like, this is Hugo Chavez, right? And so I challenged her to a debate and offered her to raise $250,000 she could send to any charity that she wanted to, because it's that important. Honestly, if I could have raised $1 million to get this woman on stage, that's important. You have to pay attention to those stars that are just able to go put on a t-shirt, I'm with her, and Bernie is catching a bit of a wave in Black America. Hip hop artists are getting behind him a lot for some reason, and I'm assuming it's because they want to give up all their money. So Cardi responded to my debate request and was like, she was civil. She was like, I'm just standing behind my candidate in the same way that you stand behind yours. Like, I'm not showing up because none of them want to show up and debate. That's the whole point. AOC was offered, NBC reached out to us and said they would love to have us both sit down and have a debate. AOC declined, I said yes. When you're lying, you shouldn't debate, right? That's a pretty good rule to follow. So the left will never debate a conservative. You'll never see a leftist debate a conservative because they don't want to be exposed for the frauds that they are. And it's an uphill climb, but I do think it helps when we challenge them to debates and they decline them. I think it makes their followers go, well, if everything you're saying is real, just expose Candace, right? Just expose her as an Uncle Tom race trader. If I'm actually all of those things, they should be happy to sit down with me and to expose me for that. But they don't do that because they know that I'm on the side of truth and they're on the side of lies.
Are you really?
Someone back there asked the question, if you're going to run for president.
Why, you guys don't like Trump? Right? So, we have an awesome president. No, I knew what you were getting at. I always used to say blanket no across the board because I think that you can box harder from the outside and make more of an impact. But now I just say exactly what Trump said 30 years before he ran, which is that if my country needed me, I would raise to the challenge and I would run. But at this point in time, I have no political ambitions.
Candace, welcome to Colorado from somebody whose family has been here for 7 generations.
Oh, wow.
But also, I wanted to know if Black Lives Matter has ever invited you to speak.
They have not, but I had them on my show, of course, because I like talking to the other side. So one of the first episodes of the Candace Owens show on PragerU was to invite the leader of Black Lives Matter in New York on my show because, their ideas are so stupid, you got to give it a platform, right? So we debated for an hour and 10 minutes, and it was so bad for him that Black Lives Matter people were writing saying, he's not the real representative. I'm like, he's the chairman of Black Lives Matter. Who else could I didn't find a random kid protesting. I got the chairman, and he's just sitting here. He acknowledged all my points. I'm like, hey, so you acknowledge that white American men are more likely to be shot and killed unarmed by police? Yeah. You acknowledge that Hispanic American men are more like, yeah, but we have to start with Black America. So you acknowledge that as a Black American, you have a higher chance of being struck down by lightning than you do of being shot unarmed by a police officer. Yeah. You acknowledge that a police officer is 18.5 times more likely to be shot by a Black man than the other way around. Yeah. It was just like, and then he says, the best part is, then I get to all this and I say, so you really care about Black lives, yeah? And he's like, yes, of course, that's my main thing. We have to make sure we protect Black lives. So you're pro-life. No, I don't get into that debate. 18 million Black babies aborted since 1973, 9-month term abortions on the line, more Black babies aborted than born alive in inner cities. And this man is sitting across from me telling me that the important thing to go after is the thing that's impacting 16 Black Americans a year. And that equates to 0.00004% of the Black population is impacted. And it's actually creating more of a problem for Black America because police officers don't want to do their job. So it actually raised the rate of homicide. It went up by 19% across the country after the Black Lives Matter movement, which is harmful. So I basically exposed them to be fraudulent, and I'm seeing it's changing now where I stay in touch with him, and they've done some things where they stood with the police officers in New York against Bloomberg. So they've done some things now. They're a little more conservative, but I said to him, if you pick up a more pro-life stance and talk about how it's negatively impacting Black America and drop this bogus claim against our police officers and our law enforcement officers who have one of the toughest jobs in America, then I would be vocal for you. But until then, you guys are, morons, and that's really what they are.
Hi, check. Just want to make
sure it's working. I just wanted to thank you so much for coming. My wife who couldn't be here with me today. We're both big fans. We've been following you since the very beginning. We've been spreading the word about you and PragerU and Alex Jones around this valley, which is kind of a Democratic stronghold, if you have of that. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
I have 2 quick questions. One, can I have an autograph?
Yes.
And 2, who of the Democratic clown show do you think will make it to the very end? Do you think anybody even has a chance?
You know what? I mean, up against Trump, I actually think it'll be Kamala Harris. Yeah, I just something, I just think it's going to be her because she sort of has backtracked on like the more, I mean when I say backtrack on the more insane rhetoric, I think it's going to be Kamala Harris for a lot of reasons, and she's already calling other people racist, which is interesting. Like early, she's like, Joe Biden, you're a racist, you know? So, and she's got the minority, she checks the minority box, and if that's what they're looking for, I don't see how, it'll be Kamala or it'll be Bernie. Bernie might get more of the black vote though. Yeah, and she's also not black. So when she was sworn in, for those of you that don't know, now she's black because she's running for president. But when she was sworn in as an Indian, Indian American. So suddenly she was like, you know what? Actually, it'd be more convenient if I was black. And so she's changed her race over the last 2 years. So it's been interesting.
Okay, my question.
The Stand? Oh, Jussie Smollett. Yeah. Are they related? No, you can't start that conspiracy theory. I'm definitely going to look into it.
Okay, my question is, this article yesterday explains it the best. People of color hijacks Black America's hard-earned legacy, and I'm sick of it. Kira Davis, Red State. I wonder what you thought about that war of labels between people of color and black, and what was it like running into Kamala Harris the other day?
Oh yeah, you guys didn't see that. I ran into her at the airport and I couldn't resist. So I went up to her, I photobombed her first, and then I went up to her, and she was like, oh, hello, are you one of my supporters? And I was like, oh no, I'm Trump 2020. And she was like, that's okay. And then, ironically, we were getting on the same flight. We flew to Detroit together. Yeah, she was nice and understanding. She's very small, by the way. So that'll be something that'll pick up. I don't think people realize how small she is, but she was nice. She was nothing bad to say about her. She totally respected the fact that we travel in an army of MAGA hats and that we were Trump 2020. And of course she understands. He's the greatest president. I mean, what's not to understand? Hello.
Hello. First, an appeal and a question.
Okay.
Seeing as we're in a Jewish community center, can I make appeal to you to put a J in that BLEXIT? So here's the question. You do a magnificent job of explaining how progressive policies actually devastate the very people that they purport to help. Problem is that conservatives are still perceived as the black-hatted, while progressives get to coast on their benign intentions above the wreckage of their policies. I think that we also need to advance a narrative about how our ideas will actually help everybody, especially the most vulnerable.
Right.
So how would you do that?
Well, I think conservatives have got to get better at fighting. I mean, Trump's a fighter, right? So just a case in point, they called him a racist for pointing out the truth about Baltimore. What did he do? He doubled down and then called them racist. That's incredible. It's never in my life. Could you imagine any other candidate that ran against him? Who was his runner-up in? Was it Ted Cruz? Who was this? Was it Ted Cruz? I can't imagine any of the other Republican people that were running against him that would have ever had the gall to do that. To say, like, not only am I doubling down, I'm tripling down, quadrupling down. He sent like 20,000 tweets about it, and then said, you know what? You're racist, right? I mean, like that's pretty incredible. And he's right, because their policies are, if a definition of racism, as the left has purported it, is things that are harmful to Black Americans and that are particularly going after Black Americans disproportionately, then the most racist people in the United States are the leftists and the Democrats, right? Every single one of their policies harms Black America. I cannot think of a single good thing that liberal policies have brought to Black Americans. I can't. And I'm looking for it. If I'm wrong, please correct me. If there's even one, let me know. So I think that part of it is a little bit of courage is needed to go in there and to not be afraid of being called racist. That's like, I mean, now these names, it's like Pokemon. You got to catch them all. Bigoted, racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobe. Great. Get past that. You're going to get called a few names. But the truth, getting to the heart of it, and Ron DeSantis was incredible at this in Florida. He won because he received what they were not expecting him to receive, 19% of the vote from black women. And what did he do? He went door to door, was sitting to them, talking to them about school choice. Very simple. What do black American women who we know are running the households because of the single motherhood rate care about? Where their kids go to school. Take something that matters to them, that we care about. We're pro school choice. That matters. You don't have to get lost in the left and right. You don't have to put on a MAGA hat even. You don't have to say I'm pro Trump. Speak to what actually matters. And black American women care deeply about opportunities for their children. And to communicate effectively, I think, is also really important. Not speaking above anyone's head. Trump is brilliant at that. He can take a chant and you get everything he means, right? Lock her up. Oh, the president should be above that. He is taking something, breaking it down, and saying basically they're frauds. They've been doing dirty things. They're taking things from America. He turned it into a hashtag that was trending and it felt cool and it felt relevant. My BLEXIT movement, look at what we're wearing. T-shirts, bright colors, Afro-pop. It's definitely not CPAC, right? And it's more appealing in that way. And we have white speakers there too to talk about things that matter, because we're not creating segregation, right? We're trying to do the opposite and remind people that we can all, live together peacefully. And all of those ways, making things cool and relevant and not being afraid to talk about the better ideas which are on our side. And I would recommend not starting at I support Trump, because there is still a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome in the black community, which I'm working to reverse. I'm getting close.
Let's thank Candace for coming.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all for coming.